I plan to marry my lover, so let's divorce, my wife quite boldly declared. But what really floored me was her next request. And for the sake of my new married life, could you please take care of my parents as they age? What?
I appreciate your understanding.
Her parents, surprisingly, never condemned their daughter's infidelity, but instead seemed to rely on me without any hesitation. It was clear to me that I couldn't stick around with these unreasonable folks. I shared some crucial information with them, and they suddenly turned pale, apologizing earnestly. "We're extremely sorry." I'm Patrick, a 40-year-old office worker. Jackie, my wife, and I have been married for about 15 years. Our story began at work as colleagues at the same company. Through collaborative projects and after-work drinks, our friendship blossomed into a relationship. Jackie is 5 years my junior, and back then, her youthfulness and vulnerability made me want to protect her. She was captivating, kind-hearted, and I found myself falling head over heels for her. After a string of successful dates, we made it official, and a year later, I asked her to marry me. Getting married to the woman I love was exhilarating. Sure, I was only 25, but I was absolutely certain that I loved her. Life after marriage was blissful, with both of us working. After 3 years of being married, we were blessed with our son Daniel. He was a bundle of joy, looking like a little angel when he was born. We had our happy little family, and after Daniel's birth, I shifted to remote work to dedicate more time to parenting. It turned out to be a rewarding decision as I got to spend ample time with him. I also maintained a good relationship with my in-laws. They always greeted us warmly whenever we visited, making me feel quite at home. We seemed to be leading a genuine blissful married life. They doted on Daniel, their beloved grandson, and our visits became a frequent affair. It was then that my wife suggested,
"What if we move in with my parents? They could see Daniel every day and we could live in a larger house without any rent."
It seemed like a practical idea considering our amicable relationship with her parents and Daniel's upcoming growth spurt. I agreed, though I'd regret this decision later. At first, the shared living arrangement went smoothly. My in-laws seemed overjoyed to live with their grandson, and Jackie appeared to be relaxed in her parental home. I poured my efforts into household chores and raising Daniel alongside Jackie, and there weren't any complaints from either her or her parents. We all joyfully witnessed Daniel's growth. However, one aspect did bother me, my in-laws' indulgence in spoiling Daniel. They would grant all his wishes and shower him with pocket money. Considering the potential negative effects on this upbringing, I decided to address this issue with them one day. "Could you refrain from spoiling Daniel excessively?" The reaction was furious.
"Are you trying to snatch away our joyous moments with our grandson?"
"Do you think you're the only one raising him?" They yelled in retaliation. But as a father, I was firm in my conviction to impart proper education to Daniel, so I stood my ground, refused to back down. I'm not saying that you shouldn't hang out with Daniel, but I am saying please don't buy him anything and everything. "But if Daniel wants something, we want to buy it for him."
"Yeah, if we don't buy it and he gets upset, how will you take responsibility if he ends up hating us?"
It seemed that my in-laws were keen on spoiling Daniel in an attempt to win his affection. But if their indulgence led him to become spoiled, I wondered how they planned to take responsibility. "I promise I'll explain to Daniel how kind and loving you are, but please stop buying him everything he asked for." Regardless, it didn't seem like my in-laws were convinced, and when my wife returned from work, they twisted the story to make it seem like I was the bad guy.
"Patrick is saying we can't play with our grandson."
"He wants to be the only one to pamper him."
"He's trying to ostracize us. It's horrible."
I was astounded by the accusations from my in-laws. Worse, my wife swallowed their words without question.
Hey, what's going on? Are you being mean to my parents?
Hold on a minute, I didn't do anything like that. I explained the situation to my wife. I simply asked them not to spoil Daniel by buying him everything for his own good. But instead of believing me, she sided with her parents.
Stop joking around. Don't make up such convenient lies.
I'm not lying.
So you're saying now that my parents are the ones lying?
My wife was furious, her eyes wide open. No matter how much I explained, she chose to believe her parents over me.
I didn't think you were such a horrible person.
Since then, my wife and in-laws began treating me coldly.
Your cooking is awful.
You're serving fish too often. Are you treating us like old people, you fool?
Don't make things difficult for my parents. You're really useless.
Every day, I was barraged with these kinds of comments from my in-laws. I wondered how they could keep belittling me like this. It's mentally exhausting to keep tormenting someone like this, isn't it? I considered divorce. However, our son was only about 5 at the time, and too young. I hesitated to take him away from his mother. Plus, I wasn't sure I'd be able to take him with me if I left. Given the current situation, it seemed like it would be better for my wife, who had a stable salary, and her parents who could take care of him, to keep Daniel. I didn't want to give up my son just because things were going sour with my in-laws. So I decided not to divorce and simply endure the situation. Taking advantage of my non-resistance, my wife and her parents kept hurling harsh words at me. Their verbal abuse was so extreme that I started to question if they're really the same human beings I knew. Thinking of them as less than human made things somewhat bearable. Thus, I continued to live in this harsh environment. No matter how poorly I was treated by my wife and in-laws, I thought it was better if I could be there to watch my son grow up. Daniel thrived, and soon he started elementary school. I had been worried that my in-laws spoiling him might make him selfish, but he was a well-behaved child at home and the same at school. I was overjoyed when his teacher told me that he was a kind and thoughtful child. He was also doing well academically, but for some reason, my in-laws took credit for Daniel's success. It was because of our education that he's doing so well.
That's right. We praise him and help him grow. If he wants something, we buy it for him. That's what's important.
The notion that buying everything a child wants leads to better academic performance is nonsensical. But it seemed my in-laws wanted to involve themselves in everything. I simply praised my son for his hard work and dedication, never resorting to bribing him like my in-laws did. Even so, Daniel seemed to adore me, always sharing his experiences at school with me. This probably displeased my in-laws, who began to increase the value of the gifts they gave him as he moved into higher grades, from candies and toys to the latest gaming consoles and games. Despite my efforts to dissuade my in-laws, I focused on teaching Daniel to manage his time and honor his commitments. My in-laws continued to interfere, saying things like, "It's cruel to stop when he still wanted to play.
We bought the games for him so that he can enjoy."
This created a pattern where they would report to my wife and I would get yelled at. It was ludicrous, but as long as my son grew up well, I could tolerate it. As time passed, Daniel turned 13 and entered middle school, a time when adolescence could bring new challenges for a parent. It was during this time that an unexpected issue arose. One day, my wife suddenly said she had something to talk about and called me into the bedroom. "What's the plan calling me in here?" I wondered, given that our relationship had completely cooled off, and I certainly had no interest in rekindling our physical relationship. But my wife's next words were shocking.
"I plan to marry my lover, so let's divorce."
"Excuse me? You want a divorce?" she continued. I suppose it's a shock since I've been careful to keep it hidden. But I think it's time to tell you. She boldly started saying things like that. I couldn't understand why she suddenly wanted to let me in on her secret affair. I never understand what thoughts go through the head of dumb people. And for the sake of my new married life, could you please care for my parents as they age? One? Hold on a sec. You want a divorce, right? Then it would mean I'd be taking Daniel with me. When I said that, she retorted with something ridiculous. I'll be the one moving out. What? I don't get it. I'm telling you that I'm moving out so I can start a new life with my man. But I'm worried about my parents, so you can take care of everything about the house here. You can stay here with Daniel, so it's a win-win, no? I was dumbfounded. There was nothing win-win about it. I was at a loss for words at her unreasonable comments. So go break the news to my parents now. My wife abruptly headed towards the living room, leaving me in a hurry to follow her. She gave the same explanation to my in-laws as she had given to me. I thought they would scold her, but instead, they too turned out to be unreasonable. Well, it will be lonely without you, but I guess there's no other way around. Right. Well, newlyweds should spend their time alone. This man will take care of us. We'll be fine. We're counting on you from now on. I didn't know what to make out of my in-laws who would rely on me without blaming their daughter who had an affair. If you try to leave, you should leave our grandson, Daniel, behind. If you're leaving, you should leave alone. I couldn't stand these irrational people, and so I told them something. Just so you know, since it's a divorce due to my wife's fault, I can demand compensation, and there's a higher chance that I can take custody of my son. What do you mean? Your daughter had an affair. Normally, it's better for the child to live with a parent who didn't cheat, right? Hold on. Does that mean you're going to leave with Daniel? Yes, that's what I intend to do. We won't let that happen. Yes, let's ask Daniel. My in-laws and wives went to call our son. Could they really intend to tell everything to our son? Our son, who knew nothing, arrived in the living room. What's up? Mom and Dad are getting divorced. What? And we think it would be best if you live here with your grandparents. What do you think? The question was posed unfairly. Before they could continue, I quickly chimed in. Explain properly that we're divorcing because of your infidelity. At this, my wife and in-laws seemed panicked. Daniel just started junior high school. That's right. What's the point of shocking him like this? They accused me, but before I could argue back, our son opened his mouth. The one who treated the cause of the shock is Mom, right? Why is everyone blaming Dad? What? I've been hearing your arguments from a while ago, and about who I should live with after the divorce. Of course, it's Dad. Daniel, why? Don't you want to live with your grandparents? Grandpa and Grandma, you were kind to me, but you treated Dad terribly. Honestly, I couldn't forgive that. I've been looking down on both of you and Mom, who blamed Dad together. Looking down? And the in-laws looked shocked. Anyway, my answer is clear. I'm leaving here with Dad. From now on, I'll live freely with him. Oh, Daniel, I was truly happy that my son stood up for me. My in-laws, their faces pale, then apologized to me. We're terribly sorry. Please don't leave this house. We don't want to be separated from our grandson. So there they were, my in-laws pleading with me. My wife also desperately pleaded. Please, my plan won't work if you two don't stay here. My son and I couldn't back down anymore. Daniel and I will sever all ties with you. We'll definitely leave this house, so be prepared, I said, beginning to gather our belongings. My son joined me, packing only the essentials into his bag. Where are you going? to my parents' house.
But if you go to your parents' house, Daniel will have to change schools. That's too cruel.
My wife tried until the very end to keep us here with such arguments. However, my son shot back. It's better to change school than to stay in this house. Mom, you should first reflect on the terrible things you did by having an affair. Do you even realize how bad this looks? My wife, scolded by our son who had just started junior high, looked down with a pale face. I was doing my best not to laugh at that ridiculous situation. As for my in-laws, they had collapsed in exhaustion. Ignoring them, my son and I left the house and drove to my parents' home. Later, I hired a lawyer and demanded a divorce from my wife, along with compensation and child support. Of course, I also demanded compensation from her lover. Apparently, she thought she could avoid paying child support if she could have Daniel stay at her parents' house. But things didn't go as planned, and she ended up having to pay both alimony and child support. Moreover, her lover apparently dumped her, saying that the story was different. Currently, she seemed to be using most of her income to pay for the alimony and child support while staying at her parents' house. By the way, I told the neighbors about this whole incident, and I also sent a certificate document to my ex-wife's workplace, so everyone around her is aware of her affair, and she and my in-laws are being shunned and isolated. Apparently, her parents blame her, saying,
"We can't see Daniel because of you."
To which she retorted, "I hope you realize you've been living a rich life because of my earnings." It seems like they're fighting every day. My ex-wife sent me a long, rambling message about wanting to reconcile, but I just read it and block her. I also block her calls, making it impossible for her to contact me. I return with my son, continuing to work from home as I had before, and watching my son grow. Despite everything that happened, my son remains a kind-hearted child and seems to be adjusting well to his new school. I plan to continue working hard and watching my son grow.